Oh, if you are subscribed, then how can you subscribe again? Don't subscribe twice, or else I would get unsubscribed. So in previous tutorial guys we just talked about Goto statement break and something else, and in this tutorial we're gonna talk about functions. So what are functions? Functions are a group of statements that together performs a task in C language. Every time you compile a file in C language you must include a function, and by default you always are been using a function, and that is the main function here. This is also a function, and this function is predefined function, which means it's pre-built and it must be there to run a C file. And another type of function is user defined function. So this here is a user defined function. So there are four types of user defined functions. We'll talk about that in next tutorial. In this tutorial we are just gonna talk about the first type of function, that is function with arguments and a return value. So what does that means? So here, as you can see, after hash include stdio.h, I've written int sum, int x, int y. So this part is called function declaration. This is where you can declare your own function with your own function name. So you can name anything here so that you can make it your own function. So what are the requirements for function declaration? So first is it should have a return type. Return type means it should have something here. Either it can be void or int or something else. So next thing is function name. So this is a function type, return type, and this is a function name. So you can name it anything as you want. And the next thing is parameters or arguments. So whatever comes in between this parenthesis, this is called parameters or arguments. So here I have written int x and int y, which means I have taken two parameters both with integer type, and every time you declare a function there should be semicolon behind it. And next thing to remember in function is you can either make your function at top, or either you can do it this way. So when you make your whole function at top, the it should look like something, it should look something like this. So what happens here is I don't need any semicolon behind, and this here we won't need if we put our the next block, that is user defined function block, at top of the program. So why is that so? If you ask me that, then at first the compiler reads this block and then goes to main block. So that's why when you put this at top you won't need any function declaration, but when you use this at the bottom you need a function declaration, so that the compiler should understand that yes, you have defined a user defined function and you have declared it at top. So that was function declaration, and next is function call. So we have declared a function, user defined function here, and now we should call that function to get the process inside this function. So simply what I have done here is I've taken three variables inside my local block, and all of these variables are of integer type, and I have assigned a value 0 to su. So why I have done this? So because if I have not done that, it might not be error, but it's quite usual if you do this. So what it helps is to store a 0 value before some value is assigned to su. So that's why I have kept 0 assigned in su here. So now what happens is after you have declared your function, it's the time to call the function. So just avoid this part for a while and we'll just talk about this part in some time. So here, after the compile after you compile your file, the compiler just checks the declaration here, and inside the your main block it search whether the function is declared or not. If it's declared here, then it would search the definition block, and if it's not declared it would throw an error. So while it's searching your definition block, it also checks that whether you have passed same arguments as declared in your functions or not. So here you have passed, so I have passed here two arguments and I have passed here two arguments. So both of them are two arguments and all both of them are of integer type. So that's how the function, the compiler would understand, yes, this is the same function as I have declared and with the same kind of parameters. So guys, remember one thing: the parameters you pass in your function declaration and the parameters you pass in your function call should be same, or else there might be some error. So when this happens, the value of a that I have input here gets passed and b also gets passed, and the compiler when checks this, if it's declared here at top or not. If it's declared, then it goes to definition block and says that the value of the first argument equals to the value of first argument in your defined block, so and the second as second. So here the value of a which I have input gets assigned to x, and the value of b which I have input again gets assigned to y. That's how the variable gets passed into parameters list of user defined function. So now what it does inside a user defined function is it returns the value x plus y. So remember one thing: whenever you are using int, it should return some value here. So I am returning the value x plus y. So here, which means x has the value of a and y has value of b. So if I pass 2 in a and 1 in b, and what it will do is it will pass that value, a's value to x and b's value to y, and when a plus b is done, the value would be returned in the our here. So when the sum is done, the value gets returned to our this place where we call the function. So this value a plus b occurs here. So a is assigned to x and b is assigned to y. So x plus y would occur here and would get a specific one value which would get returned in this place. So now this value is been assigned to su and we are printing su. So as I explained, here I have entered the value of a as 2 and b as 1, and the sum of both is 3. So you can just print it this way, or there is another way which you can print this same thing. So I'll just comment this, or let me just do it. Excuse me guys. So let me just compile it again and let me enter the value 3 and 4. So as you can see, in the first print, what I have done is I passed the value of a in first, b in second, and at third what I have done is I have called my function directly in my printf. So what it does is it checks this and directly jumps into our definition block, pass the value of a and b into x and y respectively, and it gets summed here and directly return the value at our print. So no need to assign a different variable and display that variable. So this is how it works in the other way. So this much for today, guys. We just talked about function with return type and arguments. So we'll talk about other three functions in future tutorials. So see you guys in those tutorials, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment.